Carrying the unconscious body of the S-Class hero Metal Bat, Sweet Mask, the number 1 A-Class hero, would make his way across the battlefield, questioning what in the world was going on. As before him, piercing the very sky above, was what remained of Sage Centipede, the dragon-level enactment of God's will that was cleaved in two as a testament to Garou's martial arts perfection. Mask would wonder if every one of the heroes was taken down, but he wasn't sure because at this point it was so dark out. But what he would notice would certainly irritate him, as before him was the unconscious body of Flashy Flash, and along with it was a monster that he would presume to be attempting to finish him off. But of course we know this monster to in fact be Manako, who despite being a monster is a pretty good-willed creature regardless. Perhaps she was a bit nefarious in the beginning, but she's too cowardly to truly stick with that and is very quickly warmed up to the likes of Saitama and Flashy Flash. She is far from being powerful or anything like that, being more like a fancy flashlight, and with the Monster Association being no more, her purpose in the story will be a big question mark. Personally, I'm just hoping that she ends up hanging out with Flashy Flash or Saitama and can lead a casual life. Here, she was trying her best to wake Flashy Flash up so that they could get out of the danger zone. But it would not take long for the threat of Sweet Mask to approach and attack, which seriously freaked me and Manako out because I would really hate to see her get violated like that. But just then, something miraculous would happen, as the fist of Sweet Mask would be suddenly repelled by an entire naval aircraft carrier, and you already know what that means. From there, Sweet Mask, Metal Bat, Manako, and Flashy Flash would all be launched into the air, much to the dismay of those conscious, and plunge into the depths by way of the surging current of oceanic water. Now King would notice all of this and begin to wonder where Saitama was. All the while, Saitama was the one that used the massive carrier like a surfboard and brought it nearby. But as he questioned this, King was still holding onto the unconscious Tatsumaki after Blast handed her off to him, making her the third unconscious combatant that we have seen already, and there are plenty more to come. As to praise him for this would be some of the formerly downed heroes, which would consist of the so-called New Blizzard group. We would have the likes of Fubuki, a chunky tank top master who was carrying both Bang and Bomb on his back, with Bang still being knocked out from his epic fight against Garou, and in his arms would be the likes of Darkshine and Zombie Man. We will eventually get to see more of the S-Class heroes with them, but this is everyone shown for now. But then, perhaps most shockingly, in the hands of Spring Mustachio will be the severed torso of Master Nichiren, who we'd previously believed to be dead following his bestowal of the legendary Sunblade onto Atomic Samurai. This guy, along with the other sword masters, had his body dissolved by the acidic onslaught of Ugly. I have to wonder what the purpose of him living might be. Hopefully he might be able to guide Atomic a bit on how to master the Sunblade, making him several times more powerful for future battles to come. But disregarding all of that, King's attention would be on Tank Top Master, as you would wonder who in the world this man was, which is quite the contrary to Sweet Mask's prior interaction with Pig God, where he didn't recognize the morbidly obese hero in his skinny form. Now, as for why Tank Top looks to be a bit husky right now, we'll more than likely learn this from some redraws to come. But although Fubuki was putting on a brave and boisterous front, in seeing the current state of her elder sister Tornado, would swiftly rush forward with a surge of Esper energy at her fingertips. She would frantically tell her sister to hold on while she offered some of her own energy. Mustachio would question this decision as Blizzard herself was already in a poor physical state and had been healing up a bunch of people already, but she would disregard this concern for the sake of her sister's well-being as her eyes would begin to bleed from the strain. Fubuki has always been in Tatsumaki's shadow. Growing up, her sister was so overprotective that she could never truly march out on her own. But now, with Tornado in such a sorry state, it was largely up to Blizzard to take care of her. Although before, despite being wounded, Tatsumaki continued to refuse her sister's help, and it's a bit questionable how much of an impact her power may be able to have here. She would then call upon Tank Top Master to help her out. The thinking was that if Tatsumaki would be healed even just enough for her to function, she might just be able to get them all to safety by way of telekinesis. But there was not nearly enough time for them to accomplish this. Tank Top Master would then think about Tatsumaki for a moment, refusing to accept her death before his mastery of tank top wearing would manage to surpass her psychic powers. A ridiculous notion that will never happen, but surely a man can dream. And with that dream in mind, Tank Top will be all fired up and lift up everyone simultaneously. And here we would get an even better look of who was involved in all of this, as every one of our S-Class heroes, with the exception of the few we had seen elsewhere, are here. And with that, he would tell them all not to bite their tongues. Again, Blizzard had already used up a bunch of her energy healing the wounded, so King would be urged to leap atop the deck of the ship ahead of time for the sake of catching everyone. What would most definitely be a disastrous move for obvious reasons, and quickly in response, King would come up with the excuse that these shockwaves to be found with the King-style super catch might harm the injured, so it would probably be better to use psychic powers to do so. But that's when he would notice it. Right on top of the ship was none other than Saitama, who had concluded that this was a good spot to park. Now, Saitama's presence would be absolutely major for this chapter, as later on, he would finally face Garou. When it comes to bringing some of the best One Punch Man content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered, so subscribe to the channel with notifications on. Seeing Saitama here would immediately change everything. King would tell all the other heroes to hold on, as he was certain that they would all be fine if they simply stayed right where they were. Nobody would really understand, but of course, King is king, and so when he speaks, you listen. In the meanwhile, Saitama would shift positions, sauntering off elsewhere, only to yet again embed his boots into the deck of the ship and give it a mean twist, serving to move the entire thing yet again with a single movement. Everyone, King included, was absolutely blown away here, and in complete and utter disbelief. But oh wait, Saitama was not done, as now he would prepare his legs before leaping away with an unreal degree of force. The ship would crumple from the launch point as everyone would really feel the shockwaves of all of this. The ship, which was now effectively embedded in the ground at an angle, would redirect the ocean's water right over the heroes, leaving them unharmed. Nobody but King knew that this was Saitama's doing, but boy were they fortunate that he did so. And this luck of theirs would get even crazier, as not only did the ship protect them from the fallout of evil ocean water's death, it also protected them from being crushed by the corpse of Sage Centipede. From here, Tank Top could not help but admire King, grateful that thanks to his leadership, they avoided a catastrophic decision like throwing everyone onto the ship. Meanwhile, King was thinking about Saitama's lack of subtlety, but hey, since no one ever recognizes him for his feats, I'd argue that he's a little too subtle. However, this relief would only last so long, as the flood of water would become an issue yet again. As such, Fubuki would advocate for them all to get going. And we cannot forget about Sweet Mask, Metal Bat, Manako, and Flashy Flash, who were still being swept up by the ensuing waves, conveniently bringing them to where everyone else was. But running along the carcass of Sage Centipede would be Pig God, who was now restored to his typical size. And this man had a plan in mind. Oh yeah, he'd break through the blanket of water like the Kool-Aid Man, and with no warning would hurtle towards the collective and pull a Kirby and store all of them inside himself. The watery onslaught would continue, but with this, they would all be safe. This was a move we had already seen him pull that got the A-class heroes and civilians to safety, so yeah, it's not as if he's Majin Buu over here and absorbed all their combined powers, although that would be pretty cool. To be fair, the ship's crew was still on board, so there are definitely some civilians to be rescued, but I guess they're not really that important. And now that we don't have to worry about them, now that the battlefield was clear, it was time. All along, all we have needed is for there to be no witnesses. This is the foolproof formula for an appearance from Saitama. Garou would stand amidst the shallow water by his lonesome, albeit not for very long. He'd remember that there was a second monster along with Sage Centipede, referring to evil ocean water, and would wonder whatever happened to it. After all, he had been hit by a torrent of its water while dealing with the threat of Sage Centipede. Truthfully, dealing with evil ocean water at the same time as Sage Centipede would have likely been disastrous for Garou. Perhaps not in the sense of him being destroyed or overpowered, but rather him finding difficulty in destroying them. Although, with evil ocean water having been blown away by a single punch from Saitama, perhaps Garou would have been able to achieve a similar feat, especially considering he took out evil natural water in a matter of milliseconds. And with that in mind, these two actually seem to have swapped adversaries in this instance, as prior, Saitama was the one to take down Elder Centipede. As just then, from behind, the answer would appear, and it would be Saitama. And as he landed, his visage was ever imposing, and it looked to be incredibly serious. Garou would turn, now having been alerted to this sudden appearance. The time has come. Garou versus Saitama is finally here, and surrounded by these calm waves would be the battlefield's strongest combatants, Garou and Saitama. as Saitama would question what exactly Garou was supposed to be. Saitama has seen Garou on multiple occasions now, but of course Garou has undergone monsterization to the extent that he looks rather different from how he did back then. He is also way stronger than he was all those times before, like ridiculously stronger, and has even had his limiter removed, just like Saitama. Garou, like many before him, is liable to underestimate Saitama here, but should be able to quickly realize that Saitama is the real deal. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.